quite a few fans who've said, did we, not just Carlisle United, but did the EFL in that early stage of the week look at project the big picture and just see the money and not think about the integrity of football, how much it matters to fans and keeping it as the heart and soul rather than just being a cash machine?
Well, I think every individual club looks at it from their own perspective. There was plenty of comments made that says we got concerns about this. It wasn't just this is great, show us the money. That'd be a total misrepresentation. Some people were much more forthright about the fact that they didn't like it at all. But there's not so little detail, and when it's such a long-term, permanent issue that you're thinking about, for me, you can't be sort of rushing to conclusions. You can form your view, but you need to see how it goes. And it was so, in my view, undeveloped at that point as to not to get too excited about it from my own point of view.
So whether it was a power grab, a money grab, whether it was giving away the EFL Cup, whether it was all of the other things that got alarm bells ringing, loan deals and all the rest of it, is it an opportunity missed?
Well, the way I look at it is that the football has been in a crisis for 7 months. We're approaching a wall. Some clubs quicker than others. And if you look what's actually happened, is we've achieved virtually nothing in solving that problem. So the problem that we face now is a consequence of two things. It's a consequence of COVID, but it's also a consequence of the sins of the past that are catching up on us. So they've made us fragile, so when a shock comes along, you feel it, and you feel it quick. But also, the structural faults within the game mean that it's not only individual clubs that are fragile, the game itself is fragile. So they're two different things. So in any walk of life, businesses, football clubs, rugby clubs, cricket clubs, whatever you want to do, they run through difficulties, and each individual has its own issues, and they're exacerbated by shocks. So you get a shock and an individual club will be in bother. So that's one set of issues. The other thing that we have at the moment is that all the sins of the past and all the things that we've done that have made the game itself at risk have built up. They've all been hidden to an extent. Some of them appear, we've got overspending and this, but generally they're hidden under the surface, and we think, oh, Premier League's making lots of money, exciting on the TV, audiences, all this kind of stuff. Very few insolvencies, just the occasional one or two. So yeah, we know we've got problems, but they don't look colossal. You get a bit of radical uncertainty comes in, bang, and everything comes out, poof, and this is where you are now. So when you have that, when you have a lot of harm, which is what we've got now, the longer you take to fix that harm, it's like the COVID curve. It's the same thing, but for football. So the harm looks like you haven't got too much, but it's building up. The longer you take to fix it, it accelerates. So we've had 7 months to fix this, and we're getting by, but people are getting more and more worried. All of a sudden, again, it's accelerating quickly. So all this comes in a rush. So all the pent-up system risks that we've been building up as a game, from all the institutions and all the clubs and all the processes, and now it all works, have all been accumulating. So when they burst out, for whatever reason, in a shock, like we've had just this week, it's carnage. So you're looking at institutions under pressure. So what's the EFL up to? What's the Premier League up to? What's the FA up to? What's the PFA up to? What's the government up to? So institutions take a kick in. The individuals within them are under pressure as well. So you're looking at individuals. Who's the leader of this one? Greg Clark, Rick Parry, Richard Masters, Oliver everybody's in the spotlight. The harm is exacerbated, and it accelerates because you haven't fixed it quickly enough and properly. in the first place. And throughout many years of relative success, you've been thinking that everything's all right and that you can do anything and you're almost invincible, and you've been building up risk, and eventually it catches up on you, and that's where we are now. So the fact that this has come out, I look at it as a positive, because I think that the game, if you suppress your risk and pretend that everything's all right, all you do is build up problems, bigger problems for a later date. So I think the fact that this has come out, it's exposing all the faults in the game. It will make some of them, maybe not all of them, but some of them get fixed, and that is better than letting them all continue and we're all thinking that we put a sticking plaster here or there, because when you do have to fix them, it's worse and it's more difficult and it's more costly. So I think it's good. Do I think that much of that'll come of what's been proposed will ever come to fruition? I think some good bits will. There'll be some bits that people don't like, but overall I think it'll make the game better. I think people are showing the cards more. There's a better debate, and these things then force big issues to be addressed. One thing that I wanted to do when I was talking about this is, it's easy to give a commentary and everybody's got a view. So, and some people's views are determined to have more merit than others, and so it's no point in me coming saying, oh, here's what I think about this issue. I think that's good, that's bad. What I want to try and do is help the fans understand what is actually going on, so they can understand, when they see things, the reality of it, and be able to question what's going on a bit better, if you see what I mean, and maybe provide some insight rather than just sort of say, right, we back this, we voted this way. I think there's more to it. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is decision making, right? And the fact that there's been lots of comment about power going to the top six against everybody else, and the risks that poses. So I'll just try and explain some things to think about here. In the leagues we have voting, and it's mostly majority voting, 50%. Sometimes it's qualified voting, where it might be in the Premier League, say 16 out of 20, whatever the percentage is. But it's very equitable. No matter how big you are, you generally have the same kind of power. So what that does in reality is it leads to proposals happening and changes taking place that are very moderate, because that's the only thing that gets through. It has to be something that doesn't affect too many people adversely and affects so many people positively not so much. So you can exactly see this with the Premier League. So the system works as a moderator against the behaviour of the top six, which is fine when you don't have big changes to deal with. When you do have big changes, that voting system can actually not help at all. So in this situation, and this occurred to me this morning, on Wednesday, the Premier League used the good side of voting to pull a halt to Project Big Picture. Could be argued, right? So that's good. The moderation happens. The over ambition, power grab, whatever you choose to label it, labels don't matter. For the good of the game, moderation prevails, and that proposal goes away for a bit, right? At the same time, that same process then leads to an offer of £20 million to the EFL, unconditional, and £30 million strings attached for a £250 million problem. So that same voting process that solved one problem doesn't solve another. So you've got to be very careful about saying, oh, one person, one vote works, because it hasn't worked, has it? It hasn't worked because the proposal doesn't come forward in a way because there's not enough support for it to do the right thing.
Fair to say that was a very divisive proposal as well, with leaving the Championship high and dry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the strength of the EFL is in its 72. There's a lot of ups and downs within the divisions, so most people can remember when they were in a different division. Not so much us, we've been in this division for too long. So it gives you a different kind of perspective. So again, sort of whether and the P&L made its decision for reasons which maybe come into another time. But trying to split that way, that was never going to work. Maybe in the same way it was never going to work with splitting 6 from 14. I mean, it's the same. It's similar issues. So you kind of look at this and you think, right, when we've got a crisis and we need some big radical proposals to fix a crisis, is the structures that we have going to fix it? And we've had 7 months that show we don't. So this is where we get into kind of the proposal from Salford, from Gary Neville and that group coming. And there's a lot to be said for that. The institutions have had 7 months to fix this. We've got an Armageddon deadline coming, and the best we can come up with is 20 million. So whether that works for some groups and not others, it's failing the game. So it isn't fixing it. So again, this is the problem of the decision making and the structures within the league. So I'm kind of going on from that, and this might be a bit controversial, but I think these are sort of things we need to discuss. We often think and try and group people in the game into label them. So we have League 1, League 2, Championship, Premier League, Top 6, the rest, Vulnerable 14, whatever they're called. We label things because it simplifies it. But in effect, these labels don't do us any favours, because the characteristics of each club are very different no matter which area they're in, and it changes from time to time. So what that means is you get self-interest, and clubs do what they need to do to look after themselves. Now, again, when you add all this up, if you get 72 clubs doing what they think is good for themselves, that doesn't mean it's not the same as the league doing the best for itself. It doesn't add up. They're two completely different things. So if you're looking for groups to come together in the interests of the game, it's very difficult, because that is not how clubs work. So the things about football family and looking after everybody, it's in reality, I don't consider the top 6 are going to look after the interests of Carlisle United and League 2 and the Pyramid. I don't think the next 14 are going to look after Carlisle United or the Pyramid. That is not how they see their jobs. Now, they may say they see it that way, but the practical reality is how they behave doesn't show that, does it? And then this goes into the problem, goes to the heart of the issue now, which is we can all see that the game's in a mess, individually, but also collectively as a whole. We can see that what's happened before hasn't fixed it, and it's not fixing it now. So it's absolutely no surprise that everybody then says, well, we need something new to fix it, because everything else has failed. The real question is, what is going to be better at fixing it than what we have now, and how do we make it happen? Because the clock is ticking, and that is the bit that I think is the most important thing for the game going forward. How do we create a structure that will fix the problems of the game not the problems of the clubs.